speed hump in. So I'm just foreshadowing that. But I was just wondering about our temporary bridges, whether we keep one, whether something was imminently in imminent failure mode, whether we have a spare one to put in place or not.
Thank you, Councillor. Certainly, your comment on 2B, the speed humps, you're correct. At Sunnyside, we did assess that. On the western side, there is a speed bump put there because it's a more gradual approach.
Yep.
It's quite straight and visible, whereas the other approach from the eastern end is on a bend. We didn't want to run the risk of a car becoming uneven on their approach to the bridge and going to the creek. So we did do that on a number of the other bridges. Hawkins Gully, I know, was another one that we assessed to make sure, because there were bends involved there too. And we haven't gone around and applied speed bumps to every bridge. We have considered the risk on the approaches. So the same would apply here. That as practical addition would certainly give us that flexibility to do that risk assessment. The question on the temporary bridges, we have obtained 2 steel structures. They're full-size 15-metre temporary bridges. At the moment, we have one in place up on Paddy's Flat North. It's actually over a bridge that has failed in the interim. It actually failed before we got round to the previous lot of load limits, so it was an additional bridge that failed in the interim. So it's actually in place over the top of the existing bridge. The other one at the moment is in place up at White Swamp Road, up near Kareela, where we're currently rebuilding the existing timber structure, and we've used the temporary bridge that we bought, the steel one, for a bypass there, because we weren't allowed to go through the creek and disturb the fish habitat. So we've got that one there probably for the next 2 months while we do that work. It's currently underway. As soon as that bridge is relieved, the plan is for it to come back down to Bunnavanoo Bridge now and put a bypass in there, because the Mount Lindsay Road, there's a major impasse there for the landowners up there. So the plan is for it to come back to that bridge. Ongoing, we've obtained some money to replace Bunnavanoo Bridge in total. So in the next 2 years, hopefully that temporary bridge will become available again, and we'll be able to then move it on to another bridge, as you say, if there's one in interim failure. In addition to that, under the 850,000 that we allocated out of the drought funding that we obtained, we've also arranged to purchase 2 further temporary bridges. So they'll be the same structure, basically, the 15-metre full steel construction. And they're basically earmarked. We've got a couple of spots that we're looking at now where we can put those where there's existing limits. But with the assessment here, if there was a higher need, we could redirect those bridges to another site. And that is the long-term plan Chief Operating Officer has, is that we basically have those 4 bridges at the moment. We can probably get another one if we need, but we can basically keep moving those around to the lower order roads and keep access so that we don't have to apply some of these load limits.
Thank you, Dave. Councillor Verry?
Dave, with the Bunnavanoo Bridge, I've got 2 questions there. One, have you got a time frame for when you're actually going to put the temporary bridge in? And the second one is, will we be seeing the plans for the new bridge before it's started? Basically, because with that one, there's been a bit of concern by the locals. If we make it exactly the same as that one, it does get flooded. We've only got to fix up make the bridge carry a little bit more water, and it'll be an all-weather bridge type thing.
When's the flooding going to occur?
Oh,
soon.
Well, actually, I think this week.
Good. Hope so. Thank you, Councillor. Dave?
On the Bunnavanoo Bridge, the side track, we're hoping that that'll happen within the next 2 months. We've just got to do the White Swamp rebuild up there, and as soon as that's completed, that bridge will be pulled out and brought back down to Bunnavanoo. So hopefully that, I'd like to say it's going to be in a month, but it's probably more likely 2 months' time before we get back to put it in. With the long-term proposal for the Bunnavanoo Bridge replacement, the The proposal at the moment is to go out to a design and construct tender. So the entire package will be put out for a consultant to design the bridge, or an organisation to design and then construct the bridge. We have engaged some consultants at the moment to actually commence geotechnical work. So they'll be looking around the site and then on about 3 bridges plus for that we've already received the funding for. They'll be looking to do some geotechnical work as a lead up to that design and construct. So that'll happen in the next month to 2 months. And then we'll arrange, once we've got that information back, we can then include that in the design and construct tender. That'll go out to be advertised in open tender. And I'd imagine because of the value, that'll be a significant value, that'll be referred back to council for consideration.
Yeah, I'm just concerned with the actual design of it. So I just like to go into the design just to make that bridge carry a little bit more water before it floods, because there's only 2 spots on that road in New South Wales that actually flood. That's Bunnamanoo Bridge and Carroll's Creek. Bukakra is safe, and all the other ones, I believe, have never been flooded. So that's the weak link, because that's the only all-weather road to Brisbane from the tablelands.
Some comment from SCE, councillor?
Through you, Mr Mayor, perhaps we could include in the tender an alternative tender and an option for changing the waterway area underneath the bridge, so that we've got, we might have to do some work and suggest an obvert level, but if we included 2 options in the tender, I suspect it's a good idea, Councillor Very, but I suspect that with the extra earthworks and extra costs, that it might blow the budget, because when the initial assessment was done, it was like for like. But so that's why I suggested perhaps an alternative option, so that we don't specify the bridge such that we blow our budget.
Any more questions to Dave to do with the report, councillors? Councillor Bronwyn?
Just on the table, Dave, it says alternate access available, and there's yeses and nos. Is that existingly available, or is there the availability to put a side cut in and an alternate access while repairs are being made?
Where are you referring to, councillor? Yeah, but which bridge? Yeah.
No, to the 7th thing that says alternate access available. Yes, and no.
Right.
2 left of the.
Yeah, I'm with you. But which bridge are you referring to?
Well, just all of them. I'm just asking, is all the yeses and nos existing? Are they existing alternate accesses, or are they just simply the fact that where the bridge is located, there's the ability to put in an alternate access as repairs are being done?
Right, thank you.
Councillor, my understanding is that they're where there's an existing route via an alternate road network, so it's not where we could just go and actually construct through a bypass. A lot of the bypasses, we may have to look at if there's land available or an agreement with the landowners. So we may be able to, on some of them that are listed as no, we might be able to contact the landowners and discuss a temporary arrangement to put a temporary sidetrack in there. But we don't have any guarantee until we actually investigate those that we can get an agreement to go through private property. So the alternate would be an alternate route right around on our existing network.
Yep.
Well, just on that, I think you'd best alter Bridge, Billarimba Road, which is about 8 down, and Quigram Creek just before it, where it's got alternate access yeses. There is no alternate access for anything over a small body truck because of the Brumby Yards going round through Drake. So there is no alternate. Well, it says here there is an alternate and there isn't. Okay. And it's a bit like the last lot of bridge report we had. We had an alternate for that Swamp Oak Creek out here, and the alternate was supposed to be through Timbarra Road. Well, if you want to levitate, you can, but not if you want a vehicle.
No, thank you, Councillor. Note your point. I'd imagine that what they might, it might have been referred to there as the alternate route although it's extreme, could be back through Tenterfield and all the way out the Bruxton Highway and back around through Rocky River. But that's
That's what I'm saying, it can't. It's impossible to put a big truck through rocks that are all over the road called the Brumby Yards. You simply cannot put a big truck through there. It's impossible. Because they're massive rocks that were blown just to let vehicles through, and you cannot put a big truck through there.
that's our difficulty, and we note that we'd review that. Certainly at the actual bridge itself, it's a deep gully and it's water, it's got constant water pretty much through there at Quigram. So there wouldn't be too many easy side tracks through there. And that's the only alternative that they might have looked at, is the full right around. But again, that would be an extremely long bypass to go right around there too. That'd add nearly 100 kilometres onto the trip, I'd imagine.
Okay, any more questions to Dave? Okay, councillors. The report's there to receive and note. All in favour? Against? Carried. Councillor, beg your pardon. Oh, and 2. But 2B, wasn't it, councillor? Speed bumps. Yeah.
Oh, in the first line.
Yeah. Signage and speed bumps.
Three, Mr. Mayor,
Mr.
if we
CE.
put a comment or an inverted colon after engineering reports as determined safe by engineering department.
Yep.
So we just add
Yep.
B as determined safe by engineering department.
Yep.
Because there may be other situations, sorry, there may be other situations where something that was arbitrarily decided can't be practical in any case. Might be no speed humps on either side of the bridge, or it might be dangerous to actually slow down to 10 kilometres an hour if someone's going to run up the back of you in places. So if we just leave it as determined safe by engineering department, that covers all bases.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. CE. You happy with that? You got that in there, sir? Yep, all good. Okay. We voted on that, councillors? Yes. Page 28, councillors. It's item GOV 19/19. It's to do with your monthly operational report for March 2019. Can I move in a second here, please? Councillor Verry, I thank you. Seconded by Councillor Rogan, and I thank you. And I'll hand over to our CE to present the monthly report.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Last month was another good month for Tenterfield in relation to grants. We were informed that we've got another 1.773 million, which takes the amount up to about 23.5 million since the end of November, beginning of December last year. I highlighted that in yellow. The other comment on page 9, I've highlighted in yellow, was that on the 4th of April, I was invited to, and I delivered a 40-minute presentation to Local Government New South Wales, big ideas to grow New South Wales, innovation showcase down in Sydney, which was well received. And as a consequence of that, the City of Ryde, New South Wales, Mr. Joe So, who's an executive manager there in the CEO's department, will be putting up a report to council to partner Tenterfield Shire Council, subject to the scope in the feasibility study being changed to include all scales, meaning if we're going to find out 16 pages of answers on the waste to energy questions, we add a few questions that are related to larger scale plants that would be suitable for city areas. The answers are going to be very, very similar. The extra time taken to add extra scales in it will be immaterial, really. And if it means that we can fund the feasibility study or not funding the feasibility study, it would be worth it. That report will go to the City of Ryde either in May or June. I've spoken to Mr. So a couple of times since then, and it's my intention to fly down to Sydney to spend half a day with them going over the scope to redraft it. On page 11, there's a comment there that council's collaborating with the New England Joint Organisation in relation to the sharing of resources for the Crown land management plans. There'll be some generic ones that are constant across different shires. And on page 15, I've made a note of the 1.779 million being $1 million for the erosion recovery allocation, which Mr. Joyce announced a couple of weeks ago, and also the 779,000 for assisting council manage weeds. And the rest of it is by question with exception. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. CE. Question to our CE to deal with the report. Do you have a question, councillor? Yeah. Councillor Forbes, yes?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. To the CE, I'm just curious to note.
Order, please, councillors. Yes, councillor.
To Terry, what's the reaction in your presentations, say down at Ryde there, to for emissions from this waste to energy concept proposal that you're putting up? And how do you respond to that? The emissions concerns, and how do they accept all that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the emissions from the largest waste to energy plant in Australia, which is 40 kilometres south of Perth, are the equivalent of 7 semi-trailers driving past a single point on a road per hour. That's the total emissions, which are remarkably less than all other traditionally powered plants. I included in my presentation some facts about emissions. The ABC chose to show a hysterical person protesting against the proposed plant at Eastern Creek, how her children were going to be affected and so on and so forth. The single night of the Sydney fireworks supplies the same amount of particulates of 10 years continuous running of a waste to energy plant. I did not see anyone on the ABC hysterical about the Sydney fireworks demonstration. Perth New Year's Eve fireworks supplies the same amount of particulates as 2.5 years of continual operation of the Kawana plant. Unlike traditional energy generators, waste to energy plants, 2/3 of the cost and 2/3 of the size of the plant, have got scrubbers that actually take the pollutions out, and conventional energy plants don't. The other thing that I mentioned in my presentation, and I really hit home on this, is that it's a scientific fact that methane is 30 times worse than carbon dioxide, but methane is invisible and you can't see it, and carbon dioxide is very visible and you can see it. Methane generated from conventional waste cells such as Bunnabanoo. I've never seen a waste cell in a downtown city. So most waste cells are out of sight, out of mind. People not only can't see the cell, they can't see the methane coming off them. The methane is, as I said, 30 times worse. So when I talk about particulates, the fireworks nights in Perth being 2.5 years worth of waste to energy, when I talk about methane, and when I talk about the extra transport costs, because at the moment there's some Sydney councils still carting from Sydney to Ipswich. Up until recently there was 60,000 trips a year. I haven't worked out the amount of particulates coming out of a truck to do basically 6 million kilometres a year from Sydney to Ipswich and back, but I'd imagine it would be quite large. When I put that to the audience changed their mind about the pollution, because the pollution, in my opinion, is an urban myth.
Yeah, of course you can, councillor. Just go with your microphone, councillor, please.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that CO2 is colours and odourless.
It is colourless and odourless, but it's usually mixed with other particulates coming out of the plants, which is why I say it can be seen where methane is not mixed with anything. It's pure and you can only smell methane when it's if you can't smell it, it's at a dangerous level. If you can smell methane, it's at an innocuous level. So most waste cells, if you can't smell the methane, that's either you haven't got any, which would be good, or it's at a level where it's so strong that your sensory perceptions can't pick it up anyway.
Councillor Peters? Yep.
The pipes that were
Yep.
down into the cell.
Yep.
You can see the methane gas coming out the top.
Yep.
Or you can see the waves of the gas coming
Yep.
out the top. It's just a pity that we're not closer. That's how we could use the methane.
Yep, of course you can.
Some councils, such as the City of Coburn in Perth, capture the methane and convert it to energy. The cost of capture and conversion to energy is quite high. They use the energy on site. They don't export it into the grid at Kawana because it's actually very, very inefficient, but environmentally it's the right thing for them to do with the size of their operation. The City of Wagga Wagga, has a methane capturing device, which has been there for about 15 years or maybe even a bit longer. And they actually turned off the connection to the grid because it was costing more money to run it than what it was. They were getting an income, so they now flare off the methane, which is the lesser of two evils. It's still better than having it going up the atmosphere, but it's a flare. Singularly, methane capture, you've almost got to be in the perfect storm for you to even be able to break even with it.
Councillor Very?
With the grant for the weeds, are we allowed to control that knapweed with that, or is it coming out of a different bucket of funding? And incidentally, on methane, that was one of the causes or theories behind the Bogle Chandler death. It's supposed to be that thick in the river there that they asphyxiated with methane.
You want to take with the weeds funding?
Yeah, we met with DPI last Thursday, and the black knapweed, we've set up a special account number for it, and the DPI will be paying for the black knapweed control separately. And it'll be a 5-year process. So it's a big job.
And just to go back to that funding, which full credit to Weeds Officer Chris Battersby, and Schrader, which is outstanding, a lot of money. So, is there any other questions to do with the monthly report? Councillor McNish.
14. Figures there for the improvements to Drake, Jennings, etc. Down to come along with, but unfortunately no one could make it.
Yep.
We made a few decisions that day about where things are going to go. But at the last meeting, I'd just like to know, if possible, before they do the work in the park, if they could meet with some of the progress people just to work out where they want to put the, the swings and things like that, have some input into the physical place where they go. So is that okay?
Kylie, I'll throw that one to you.
Yep.
Thanks, Councillor.
More than happy to continue those discussions. As a guide, we've been using the John Mongard plan for Drake, which was originally workshop with the entire community. And I was down there last week, actually with Mark Cooper, the open spaces and regulatory manager, actually having those discussions, marking out the area. And there was a member of the local Progress Association there, and we were discussing some of the actual natural attributes of the park, so water flows, those types of things, in having those conversations. More than happy to continue that. And as I said, my understanding is that people are talking about that at this point in time.
Okay, thanks, Kylie. You're ahead of me there. Page 19. talk about the emerging issues, risks and opportunities. It's pretty obvious that Tenterfield has to do something about our water supply. It's, I've probably got a better view out there than most people because they're a country right next to it, but I'd hate to think how much water we've actually got left. And now would be the time, rather than, well, we're going to now divine and see if we can find water that way, but another dam would be very, very handy. And there's a perfect spot in Curry's Gap, which most people around here are aware of, which if constructed, it wouldn't have to be a big dam. It'd be gravity fed into the local, the one we've got now. I know there's lots and lots of green issues and things like that, but due to the severity of what's happening now, and of course, there's just no end in sight to this, and there's a real possibility that Tenterfield could even end up out of water at some stage. Well,
Fair point, councillor.
fairly soon.
Yep.
So I wonder if it would be, I know there's all sorts of issues with building dams, but now might be an opportune time to perhaps follow that and just see what possibly could be done.
Good point.
I don't know who I'm addressing this to, probably the whole of council, but it's probably more to Terry than anyone else at this stage.
Yep. So, yeah, good question, councillor.
Through Mr. Mayor, perhaps the solution would be to invite Water New South Wales to Tenterfield for initial discussions and start the ball rolling so that we can engage the state government who'd be writing the checks basically for the investigation and so on and so forth, and also from an environmental point of view, liaising with EPA, etc. So if it be the will of council, a letter from council to Water New South Wales inviting them, in addition to what they're already working on, because they're working on extra bores at the moment and things like that, which aren't the solution, because we've got problems with the quality of the water in the bore, which is well documented. But invite Water New South Wales up to Tenterfield to discuss and perhaps present to council at a councillor workshop the process we'd have to go through.
Would you want this as a notice of motion, Mr. Mayor, for the next meeting, or can Terry just do it as a report and present it to the next council meeting?
Through Mr. Mayor, I wouldn't need a notice of motion to write to Water New South Wales and invite them to a council workshop, and they'd, subject from the workshop, firm it up through a council resolution and a process so that it can be included in the resolution register and doesn't fall off the radar.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Got one more. Is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
more. Push Ken.
Our old mate down there, what do you call it? Emu Creek again. Bronwyn and I were inundated with calls all weekend. I
got the emails
probably
too,
other
councillor.
councillors were as well. I noticed on page 107, there's a DA put in for temporary use of land, recreational facility, outdoor, the top one there. Was that a DA for the events of this Easter long weekend, Kylie?
No, it wasn't. So the Easter long weekend activities were covered under their existing DA. All of the DAs that have been approved outside the existing DA have had a higher level of monitoring than those, as I said, that exist under their standard DA conditions.
What's this DA? What's this for? This one here?
Councillor, you're referring to the top one
Yeah, the top one.
on page 107.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I'm happy to verify more in depth with the planning staff. However, we have had 2 temporary DA issued for that particular facility, as I understand, for the temporary use of land. So actual events that they've been running versus those within their DA. So I'm happy to follow that up if you'd like to know the exact extent of those DAs.
On the next page, I just can't find it offhand, but the assessment took 4 days, and most of them there took large periods of time. I just can't see it there. Oh yeah, halfway down page 108 was a 4-day, whereas others are 70 days, 35, 48, 21, 17, etc. And this only took 4 days, and I presume it's the same application.
In the middle.
In the middle of page
Yep.
108. Yep.
Yep. Mr. C's got some comment there, councillor.
Through Mr Mayor, the temporary use of land is a much less rigorous process than if someone, for example, has got I think one of these DAs was referring to a race day that happened about a month ago. The temporary use of land under an existing DA, but modifying an existing DA for 24 hours or 48 hours is a lot less onerous than what it is going through the whole process. And I think that's why it doesn't take very long to issue a temporary DA. For example, the temporary DA that's usually related to the Lunatic Hotel motorcycle rally that occurs once a year.
Yep.
They've got a list of things they've got to tick off, and it's usually only takes, if it's done on time, about half a day.
Yep.
Right. Thanks, Mr Mayor. That's all.
Thank you, councillor McNish. I'll go to you, councillor Bronwyn-Petrie, and then councillor Berry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just with that letter regarding New South Wales Water, I was just wondering whether we should also invite Department of Premier and Cabinet to that, since they're the ones who are involved in water for...
Yep.
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 Okay, now my questions are, I was just wondering how the veg clearing is going at the dam.
Yep.
Because I know they've been sort of clearing the inlet section.
Yep.
And depending on the timing, it seems to be taking a long time. So if it's getting too costly to actually move it, can we at least please slash it and get, so that we don't have bulk living vegetation there, that if we do get this rain, Councillor Berry's forecasting this week, because the Bureau obviously isn't, so maybe that means that we will get it, that we don't have rotting fresh weed in the water, putting extra stress on our water treatment plant and stinking and killing fish, etc. So that's that one. And
Can I just answer them one at a time, councillor, to be fair? Yep.
Through Mr Mayor, I've just written down vegetation clearing at Tenterfield Dam. How's it going? But was there a more specific? We have started.
Yeah, I know, but they're sort of doing the inlet, but I think they're not going to be able to, it'll cost too much to actually dig out the, well, I don't know, some of what's being taken away seems to be going up onto the grassy. Instead of the vegetation in the bed of where water is going to go, which is the concern. If someone could get back to me on that, please, or if Terry, maybe if you could go and have a bit of a look, would be even better. So then my other questions were.
Hang on.
No,
Oh, okay.
all good.
So through Mr Mayor, so the question would be, how's the vegetation clearing going at Tenterfield Dam, full stop, or question mark? Are they clearing the right places?
Well, yes.
Yes. Okay. Now I've got it. Thank you.
And have they got the capability to actually continue to clear the lot that needs to go?
Further in, you meaning?
Yeah, well, if they're just clearing where the water comes in, but
Yep.
they're not clearing where the water's going to back up to.
Right.
Because
Okay.
it's a huge bulk,
Yeah, yeah.
massive bulk, particularly around the southern end, massive bulk of
Yep.
vegetation, quite high, thick, in the bed of where the dam normally water sits.
Yep.
But some of the activity around there seems to be going up onto the grass, not in the bed.
Yep.
So, and the other thing is if we simply don't have the time or the staff or that to continue doing what they're doing, can we at least just slash it, brush cut it, whatever, to at least drop the bulk, get it out, so that if we do get any water in there, it's not going to have as much vegetation rotting in there.
Right, it's been noted, councillor.
Very good. Now, the other thing is
You
page,
had another question, councillor?
yeah, I've got two.
Right.
Page 87, the
Yep.
knapweed. The landowners where it's been identified, well, one family were telling me that the departmental people came there and told them that they would have to destock so that they could spray. And they said, well, they can't destock. I mean, it was a pretty, and so they've said they're happy to work with the department and move the cattle onto one half of the property while that's sprayed, and then move the cattle back and then do the other. So I just think perhaps we need to talk to the department that they don't just tell people they have to destock in order to get rid of this weed. Especially in, the cattle may not be ready to be sold, and that's what the family said, well, you're going to compensate for the loss of money we're going to have if we have to have a forced sale. So it's just being mindful, particularly in a 5-year process, of how that spraying that control is going to be taking place, and that they're mindful of people's livelihood in doing so. That's,
Mr. Said, did you want to comment there?
Through Mr. Mayor, the going up with a management regime which council will be able to comment on, and will ensure that. And I was speaking to one of the land, actually wasn't an owner, but someone with cattle there that was registered yesterday, and they were moving the cattle for one fortnight over one side while Mr. Battersby sprayed on one area, and they'd move them back 2 weeks later. So what we can do when we get the, I forget the name of the plan that Eliza was talking about, but it's a management plan for the knapweed. When we get that, we'll be able to comment on it, but it's not finished yet. The DPI has still got more survey to do. They ran out of resources. They've got a little bit more to go. I had a meeting with staff yesterday, and we're basically waiting for the management plan to come along so we can comment on that. There'll need to be public meetings as well for all affected landowners, which council will arrange on behalf of the DPI, but it won't actually be council that will be doing the speaking at the meetings. And stock that is currently registered on the area won't be able to be on-sold except through an abattoir via the sale yards.
And I need to thank our CE for working closely with the DPI over the last fortnight with this, because it is serious, and council fully supports the DPI and their task ahead, because it's a huge task what they're going to do, and it is a serious matter, and we're fully supportive, and Terry's been doing a wonderful job, and the staff that have been involved with that. Did you have another question, Councillor, deal with the report?
Yeah, page 105.
Yep.
And thanks also to the staff for the photos and everything through this report. It really is, it's very good.
Thank you.
And back to the DPI, it's just that they just need to be mindful about it. It can be done in a cooperative way without being heavy-handed and what have you. So with our staffing issues in health and building, I was just wondering, are we getting much delay in processing approvals and certificates? And then the other part of 105 is Emu Creek. Is it, I mean, I know on this last weekend we did ascertain, and I'm speaking with Mark Cooper, that they were operating under their and yet on, I can't think of a Saturday night, they went till after 9 o'clock when it was hours and hours before over the time. So is it the case that if their choice is either to cooperate and work within the existing conditions or not operate at all? That is the choice, isn't it? I mean, if they're going to continue to flout the conditions that we have imposed, what is the process? If this is going to continue to happen repeatedly, what is the response from council? Do they, and what is the thing about the sound monitors? Are they required to put sound monitors in if they continue to breach, and can we impose that as a condition, or is that an existing condition? And the other thing is, if they are continually found and proven to operate outside of the existing conditions, what is our recourse to make? Otherwise, why have a council?
I'll hand over to Kylie for reply, Councillor. There's a couple of issues to deal with there.
Yeah, there is a couple of issues. One of those is, as we know, we've been down to the property on more than one occasion and made assessments and sent staff to basically make those assessments as to whether or not noise is troublesome under the POE Act. And staff, as I said, on those particular visits and occasions haven't been able to verify that is the case. We have a report which we haven't verified for this particular weekend. So at this stage, we've got a DA whereby the owner of that property maintains that they're within the DA requirements, and we've got reports from others that they're not. We're actually unable to verify that at this point in time. So it's very hard to say whether or not the DA is being complied with because we weren't on site on this particular weekend. So obviously we'll continue to take the steps that we have. So it's not only the one occasion where council went down for the event, we have actually on other occasions sent staff down there as well, unbeknownst to people within that area, to continue to monitor that. So I guess the unfortunate position that we find ourselves in at this point in time is that we tend to get unsubstantiated reports or reports when something's happening, and then we go and actually investigate and we can't verify those reports. So from my perspective, I think we need to continue to manage those issues as best we can, recognising that we're probably not going to get, or that it will probably continue to be under scrutiny for some time.
So unless we have staff there at 8 or 9 o'clock at night verifying the activity, what is the go with these sound monitors? Are they supposed to have them, or can we get them to put them in, or what's the deal?
The question with the sound monitors, like everything, is whether or not council introduces that. At this point in time, we don't have no reason to, other than complaints which are unsubstantiated by council staff. Now, I'm not saying that they're not correct. I'm saying that they haven't been proven. And one of the challenges that we have is we've investigated the property when it's operating at its absolute peak capacity, so actually conducting races with maximum numbers, etc., and we haven't been able to verify that level of noise to justify our insistence or request to actually have a sound monitor put in.
John and I, Councillor McNish and I, also went down the day that two of our staff were present, and we were at one particular home and we couldn't hear anything either, but when I did speak to Mr. Cooper by phone, you could hear the machines operating. So clearly on that day, the noise was not going there. Now,
Councillor, can I just ask, is that the weekend just gone, or was that
no, this is
previous? Okay,
last year.
thank you. Yeah.
So clearly that day, absolutely agree, there was no noise coming to that specific house. This time around, I spoke to different residents, and they did ring the police. It got that bad apparently on Saturday night, and I said, well, please ring the police earlier so they're not at changeover or whatever, and therefore, if it's past their time, I said, not if it's 5 minutes past or 10 minutes past, but if it's still going in dark, please ring the police so you've got a chance of getting someone out there earlier. I haven't spoken to them since as to whether they did that or not. But these were completely different residents, and even if you read the website, it also says that new tracks have been opened up, da-da-da-da-da. So that's what my question is. Maybe these vehicles are operating on different tracks to the ones when Councillor McNish and I were down there and we could not hear them from a different residence. So anyway, I did ask Mr. Cooper if he could just, when he did receive a call back, and I'm not sure if he has yet or not, from the operator, to please impress upon him he must stick to the conditions by the absolute letter.
My word.
So, because otherwise we're going to have to go down, or the staff are going to have to go down if this is going to continue when it's coming from more than one person, that it is out of line. But the other question I had was too about staffing and how we're going with our processing approvals and certificates, etc.
So staff are doing a great job at this point in time. We're not experiencing too many backlogs. One of the challenges we do have with our health and building staff in particular, whereby we have a consultant coming in, is where we have a conflict of interest to actually assess some of those buildings or whatever, if there is a relationship between our existing health and building surveyor and the people. So we're using a gentleman as an interim type solution. One of the biggest challenges we've of course got is the fact that we can't actually find, and we do have our feelers out for an actual health and building surveyor, but unfortunately they're very, very hard to find and obviously to employ. And that's an Australia or a national shortage, not just a Tenterfield shortage. So we're still on the waiting list, as I said, and promoting the fact that we'd like to have a building surveyor. At this point in time, as I said, we're using that contractor to try and manage that. I guess in emerging risks, it's to continue to advise council that is a risk that we're well aware that we face, because it is one of those operations that we need to continue. Yes.
Yep. Thank you, Collie. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Berry, you've indicated.
Yes. I totally agree with Councillor McNeish about water and the dam. I'd just like to include in that, seeing it's Aboriginal land, I think we should include the Aboriginal
Yep. Good point.
right from the word go.
Yep.
Otherwise, we're going to be up against a brick wall.
Yep.
Now, with the villages, I think something should be put in the newsletter about the grant funding and how it's going to be spent, and should we go back, that's on page 14. That's
Yeah.
And actually how we're going to spend the money, and should we go back to some of the villages to see exactly what they want for their signage and some of the beautification scheme. I know with Urbanville, they were concerned about some of Mongard's plan.
Oh, okay.
I think it was about the trees in the street.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, no, I did have a conversation the other day. Just to answer, I mean, saying just a thought of one, that could that be incorporated with upcoming community meetings that we're taken out to in June, is it? Yeah.
So we're still working on the consultation and engagement phase of that. So there will be further discussions. So at this stage, because we've got money for particular items, so remembering that grant funding has been actually allocated to achieve, when we talk about things like town entry signs, particularly Urbanville and Drake already have existing urban design concept plans, I guess, which is what we're following based on the community consultation at that time. First and foremost, one of the ones we're trying to tackle at this stage is Legume, to get a basic concept that other villages can consider. And the reason that one is going first is the volume of work that's happening at the Mount Lindsay Road intersection. So that's the first cab off the rank. Most village progress associations are being consulted with the works as we go forth. It is purely more so the concept plans, I guess, and the town entry statements that we're still working on the consultation process for those ones. All of the others have been, as I said, identified. Things like the Liston Hall Committee, for example, have got a very definite idea based on the funding they've received on what they would like, and we're just processing some of the governance aspects for that at this point in time, such as getting the requisite numbers of quotes and getting the builders engaged. So the project, I guess, is the connected and vibrant, and of that, the biggest part of that is those town entry signs and the statements. Otherwise, the items have been allocated to a particular location based on feedback prior.
Thank you, Collie. Councillor Murray, question to do with the report, Councillor?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
Through you, and I'm leeching here from Councillor McNeish on the water problem, or
Right.
the future of the water problem.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if it could be made a consideration that we offer an incentive, a financial incentive, to supply people with water tanks throughout the townships,
Villages included.
villages included.
Righto. Good question.
Well, it would be a saving
Yep.
grace at the present
So
time.
he's just taking some notes. I'm sure he'll have some comment there. Comments, be aware, as all council, there's only two towns in our shire that have, three, I apologise, Jennings, Urbanville and Tenterfield, that have town water, and the rest of the villages are on their own water. So be aware of that. Did you want to comment, Mr. CE?
Through Mr. Mayor, I'll definitely include that. I'll have to take it on notice. Someone did say something to me a few months ago at a New England Joint Organisation meeting about it, but it's a bit vague. I'll ask the question again next time I meet the GMs from there. Someone would have, it's almost assured that someone would have addressed it at some stage. I can find out.
To do with the tanks?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
The reason I'm presenting that is, would it attract grants at this point in time?
Good point.
Through Mr. Mayor, that's the question that I'll ask.
Because obviously, councillor, we wouldn't be the only town in the state suffering from drought to be thinking the same way. Anything we can do.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
And whilst I'm on the subject, Curry's Gap, I did a little bit of investigating into Curry's Gap, but I'm told that You cannot have a reservoir above a township. Is that correct? Is that?
Well, there's one out here.
Oh, yeah, but that's in the past.
Apparently, you're half right, councillor. Apparently, it's not very common. I find that hard to believe, but they do reckon it's not. Yeah, apparently. There you go.
So I missed that.
Councillor, with Curry's Gap, is it a I'm embarrassed to ask, is it a national park? Is it? Is it? Okay. Not, is it a travelling stock, was it?
No.
Was it ever?
Travelling stock reserve is on the other side of the railway.
Right, okay. I'm with you now. Yep. Right up. Councillors, any more questions? Sorry. Yep. Yeah, of course.
Mayor?
Yeah, of
Just
course.
quickly, on Bronwyn's questions there, like I said, I'm out there nearly every day feeding cattle and that sort of stuff.
Just to do with the water supply,
The water
councillor,
supply,
yeah.
and
And the
those
cleaning of the
guys-
dam.
Yep. Those guys are doing a fantastic job there
Yep.
with that excavator and those 3 or 4 trucks.
Yep.
I've sort of thought to myself, I should ask Terry that would there be funds available to get another couple of excavators in there while it's so dry, like one of Darrell's, one of Sparrow's,
Yep.
and a few more trucks. And I mean, what those guys have done the last 10 days is incredible. And they've taken all the weeds right from my floodgate.
Yep.
For quite a big distance there. They're working really, really well.
Good
Secondly,
comment, councillor.
Kylie, just on, you kept saying how we can't verify the noise at Emu Creek. Would a stat deck from the residents suffice as to verification?
We need somebody who is authorised under the POE Act to be in situ, and that is, as I said, one of the planning staff, essentially, which is why even after or subsequently after the first visit by council staff, we've actually, whenever we've issued a temporary DA, actually had staff on the ground and making assessments and actually looking at those tracks, exactly what we've said. And so it needs to be somebody who's actually authorised.
So that's
to do
virtually
that.
impossible because, the physical distance from Tenterfield and the fact it's nearly always on a long weekend when the staff aren't working.
Yep.
That's the sort of, a stat deck is a legal document, is it not? It's signed by a JP, all that sort of stuff. And perhaps now, traditionally, it's just been 2 people who live together making the complaints, but this time there's many, many more. So it's obviously not just one person's grievance, it's quite a few members of the community. So a stat deck being a legal document, well, quasi-legal document.
I'll just quickly go to some comment from SCE.
Yep.
Did you want to? Yeah.
Through Mr. Mayor, not this weekend just gone by, but one of the temporary DA weekends, which was about a month and a half ago, unbeknownst to the applicant or the residents, our planner actually attended site and found it difficult to actually even locate the vehicles, let alone hear any noise. So what we've got is conflicting evidence. Yourself and Councillor Bronwyn Petrie went up there for the very first weekend and couldn't hear anything from the complainant's house, yet our ranger couldn't hear himself think from the noise actually coming from the place. And about 5 or 7 weeks ago, our planner attended Mr. Parra's residence as a result of the temporary DA and couldn't even find the racing vehicles. So on one hand, we've got a whole heap of people complaining the noise. On the other hand, and that's the third time council staff have been up there, we haven't been able to find them. So it's difficult.
That particular weekend where the DA was in for, I had no complaints. So I can just assume that it was either a flop or it was called off or something didn't happen that weekend. Because there was did you get a phone call that weekend, Bronwyn, about 6 weeks ago? I certainly didn't, because the last contact I had with those people was when Bronwyn and I went down there, which was probably about last July or June or July sometime.
I apologise, Cole. CE has indicated. So did you have any more comment to do with there's been a question to do with the stat deck?
And that's the issue is the verification, that even though it is a statutory declaration, it's my understanding that wouldn't suffice in this instance. We have to send somebody there. One of the other challenges that we have is that our complaints seem to occur in roughly the same time. So we chart the evidence as to when any camping activity is advertised. So where something is not advertised, we don't seem to get the complaints. Where something is advertised, we seem to. So there's a lot of conflicting evidence, and I guess, you know, my staff and myself aren't comfortable unless we're there. We're comfortable that we're taking all the steps that we can to monitor that particular location. I once again am happy to accept the fact that the residents do experience an inconvenience, but I can't determine when that is or get somebody to that particular location at that point in time. Now, having said that, it's not that we've forgotten or given up. We will continue, and like everything, to try and have a presence there that is not necessarily publicised to make
the
sure
best,
and verify. But I can't, as I said, if I was saying that we're going to send somebody there all the time, it's very, very difficult. So I really do feel for those people if they are impacted by the noise, but as an organisation, we're just really struggling to try and verify that at the moment.
Councillor, just out of interest, I don't mean anything by this. Does that question come from you or the complainant? Okay, thank you. I'll go to Councillor Peters. I'll come back to you, Councillor Bromwich, and I think we'll move on.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This has been an ongoing problem with Emu
My
Bridge
word.
for the last 10 years,
Mhm.
at least. And council's done everything they possibly could to control the noise down there. I'm sure we put in sound
You
monitors.
did,
We had people
did,
down there. It cost us a fair bit of
Yep.
money
heaps.
over a period of time, and I
Went to
think
court.
council's done as much as possible. And I know one of the complainants stopped the complaints for quite a while,
Yes.
but we've still got a couple that haven't moved. So I don't know what we can do about it. It's
Yeah.
very, very difficult.
No. Councillor Bromwich,
Thanks,
comment or
Mr. Mayor.
question to the report, Councillor?
One question, one comment. Just my concern is more the out of hours operation rather than whether the noise is offensive or
The
not.
allegations of that.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's right.
Yes.
And yes, there were conflicting times from some of the people on the weekend as to when something started and when something didn't, like there was an hour difference, and whether that's because of the whether it's
Yep.
where something might be operating and something might not. But my concern is more about the extent of the alleged out of hours operation.
Yep.
Not if it's half an hour here or half an
Yep.
hour there. It's
Yep.
3 hours
Yep.
or that's
Yep.
somewhat different. With the dam, and thanks, John, that's good to hear. I see the dirt piling up there, and I'm just wondering. I know on speaking to Andre, I did say that in the 90s drought, two local firms, McCarthy's and Towns's, at different times took soil out and actually not dredged it, but
Yeah.
but did actually move soil to create further capacity for
Yep.
later. But the dam was lower than it is now,
Yep.
believe it or not. And
Was.
you can now just see the area that Sparrow did.
Yep.
And Andre did say that the dam has to get a lot lower before they would do that bit. But if we could do something about getting rid of that other veg. And the other thing is they're piling the soil up. Is there any way we could maybe use that soil elsewhere, because it's quite nutrient filled, and whether some people may be happy to take it onto their properties or
Sure
something.
that just to answer from a little bit of history there, councillor, that for one, councillor would have some sort of plan in the future to do with that. And from the previous excavation out there, I know that they offered it to sporting groups, and I know some of it was used in a football field. The Show Society used it in dressage arena, so it was used around. So yeah, that's going back a while. Did you want to comment on that?
If they're happy, I can speak with the Chief Operating Officer on his return next week and just send an email out in relation to that question.
Yep. To do with the using of what's
Yeah.
coming out of the dam. Yep.
The answer, yeah.
Okay. Councillors, any more questions to do with the report? I do commend our CE in the great work he has been doing, especially with the waste energy council. It's not something that council has forgotten, or our CE did in the saddle. He's sort of on a bit of a speaking circuit at the moment, which is great for our council, and it's good for him. And next one will be in June at the Waste Energy Forum. Yes?
Through Mr Mayor, there's a National Waste to Energy Summit in the Swiss Hotel in June, and it's quite an intensive 2 days, and council's been allocated the prime slot, which is 11 o'clock on the first day, to speak on a waste to energy, and I'll be delivering a 30-minute presentation to the audience.
And I spoke to the CEO the other day because there's a panel session, as all conferences have, and I'd love to see him in the panel session. He'd be good on it. So I would to do with that, but be fully aware that it's ongoing and he's doing a wonderful job. Councillors, that's to do with the monthly operational report. I do commend all the staff and the wonderful information we are getting informed with there. And we're all happy to accept the operational report. All in favour? Against? Carried. You want to break for Smargo? Can I have a motion to suspend standing orders? Councillor Very, thank you. Councillor Rogan, seconded. All in favour? Thank you.
We got Marco in there, didn't we?
Well, he used little ones. Well, Dara.